Вам, уважаемые зрители, ей управляет непосредственно правительство России, наше правительство, и оно назначает все руководство компании. Мало того, фактически компанией управляет лично Путин, который со своим ближайшим другом Игорем Сечиным рулит важными вопросами внутри этой компании. Так вот, я вам сейчас зачитаю стоимость некоторых предметов интерьера, закупленных компанией, принадлежащей государству, в котором 19 миллионов человек живет за чертой бедности. Я думаю, что у половины из тех, кто смотрит сейчас это видео, зарплата меньше, чем 30 тысяч рублей. И вот вы особенно насладитесь тем, что компания Роснефть закупила рюмка для водки по цене 11 тысяч рублей. И в это же время зарплата учителя лицея в Тамбовской области составляет 7500 рублей. Щипцы для льда за 36 тысяч рублей. В это же время зарплата грузчика в Новосибирске составляет 23 тысячи рублей. Щипцы для сахара за 29 тысяч рублей. Нельзя их купить за зарплату подземного горномонтажника, который получает в Кемеровской области 25 тысяч рублей. Салфетница за 32 тысячи рублей. Увы, электрик в Нальчике, получающий в месяц 30 тысяч рублей, не сможет купить ее, даже отработав целый месяц. А Роснефть может. Плед бежевого цвета за 124 тысячи рублей. Можем себе позволить, но мы же не какие-то там, я не знаю, врачи-терапевты из Ростова-на-Дону, получающие 16 тысяч рублей в месяц. И корница за 83 тысячи рублей. Ну а что, доступная вещь. Всего лишь каких-то 2 месяца должен работать машинист электропоезда из Нижнего Тагила, чтобы приобрести такой стильный, необходимый в доме предмет. Ну и так далее. И глядя на это все, я хочу сказать, что эти люди, захватившие власть в России, Сечины, Путина, Медведева, они реально спятили на тему роскоши. Ну вот куда это все? Зачем это все? Это ведь все фактически демонстративно швыряется в лицо людям, которые просто с трудом выживают. И если вы, между прочим, думаете, что это какая-то супер уникальная закупка, и Роснефть покупает эти предметы на случай, если Господь Бог сойдет на землю и скажет: а ну-ка, принесите ко мне икры в самые лучшие ваши икорницы, то нет. Они покупают это для вертолета. Ну, ведь в самом деле нельзя же просто лететь в вертолете и не иметь с собой пледа бежевого за 124 тысячи рублей, рюмки для водки за 11 тысяч рублей и щипчиков для сахара за 29 тысяч рублей. Это же будет не полет, а просто какая-то катастрофа. Лично я вообще не выхожу из дома без щипцов для льда и салфетницы, а уж Сечин тем более. Они обнаглели и никогда не остановятся. Вот вроде бы логичный вопрос. Зачем они дразнят народ вот этим? Что должен чувствовать пенсионер, глядя на такие закупки? Что подумает дальнобойщик, с которого прямо сейчас пытаются содрать дополнительные налоги, одновременно закупая икорницы по 83 тысячи? Логичный ответ: не надо этого делать, не надо дразнить, не надо раздражать людей. Сейчас ведь ни у кого нет денег, сейчас довольно тяжелая жизнь. Но разгадка-то в том, что они просто не могут остановиться. Они не могут прекратить этот пир во время чумы ни в большом, ни в малом, ни в дворцах своих, ни в столовых приборах. Но вот посмотрите, вилка у них 11 тысяч рублей за штуку, нож 12 тысяч рублей за штуку и, чайная ложечка за 14 тысяч рублей за штуку. И это безумие не остановится до тех пор, пока мы будем молчать. Я вот вас очень прошу. Если у вас есть знакомый, который получает в месяц меньше, чем стоит эта чертова салфетница за 32 тысячи рублей, ну вы отправьте ему это видео, чтобы он лучше понял, что такое правительство России, что такое государственные компании России и куда уходят его деньги. И, пожалуйста, сделайте еще 2 вещи, которые раздражают нашу власть больше всего. Первое. Поставьте подпись за мое выдвижение на президентских выборах. Ссылка есть в описании. И второе. Обязательно приходите на антикоррупционные митинги 12 июня, которые пройдут по всей стране. Уже 193 города записались. А то ведь мы сидим по домам, но вот они считают, что мы вообще все согласны с тем, что они покупают себе за наш счет.
Council, which could come in handy considering 29 states, including 14 that voted for Trump, have laws that bind electors to the candidate who won. Professor Lessig has offered no evidence to back up his claim, which is being directly contradicted by the Republican National Committee and state GOP committees, who say that only one GOP elector, Chris Suprin of Texas, has revealed his intention to vote against Trump. State and national GOP leaders have also been in constant contact with Republican electors to make sure they lock down their votes, although Democratic operatives are still actively trying to sway those people. But even GOP electors who have criticized Donald Trump say they will still vote for him because they would never dream of disenfranchising their state's voters. And now there are 50 of the so-called Hamilton electors. There were 10. Hamilton, by the way, is a reference to Alexander Hamilton, who said in the Federalist Papers that the president must be elected without undue foreign influence. Those electors, all Democrats except one, are still asking National Intelligence Director James Clapper for a briefing on Russian interference in the election. Outgoing Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid says they deserve that briefing. There's no indication they'll get it. And for the record, the most electors to ever reject a president-elect was in 1808, when 6 turned against James Madison.
Finally, enough's enough. It's time for the coddle left to stop trying to undermine President-elect Donald Trump. Admit the fact he won fair and square. Now, since election night, the left has been plotting to try and prevent him from actually occupying the Oval Office. Remember the recount attempts? Well, that was a complete disaster. Donald Trump actually ended up getting more votes in Wisconsin. Now, this Russian hacking story Democrats are pushing, well, that's a total failure because it's not based on concrete evidence or any new information or fact, but Democrats can't let it go. Now, here's what White House press secretary and propagandist Josh Earnest said today.
Mr. Trump obviously knew that Russia was engaged in malicious cyber activity that was helping him and hurting Secretary Clinton's campaign. And again, these are all facts that are not in dispute.
All right, let's break this down. Josh Earnest, he would obviously not be making that claim without the approval of his boss, President Obama. And by the way, the Democrats, well, they weren't caring about the Constitution for the past 8 years as Obama was stomping on it. So you have the outgoing president of the United States now actively trying to delegitimize his successor. And that's not the only tactic that Democrats are deploying. They are plotting basically what amounts to a political coup. You heard it right. They're trying to undermine our democracy and create a constitutional crisis, all because their corrupt candidate lost and you didn't vote for her. Now, on Monday, members of the Electoral College, they will meet to officially cast their ballots for president and vice president. And the left, they're doing everything they can do to try and convince these electors not to do their job and not vote for Donald Trump. And not surprisingly, Hollywood liberals, they're throwing their support behind this very radical idea to create a constitutional crisis. Watch this.
Republican members of the Electoral College, this message is for you. As you know, our founding fathers built the Electoral College to safeguard the American people from the dangers of a demagogue and to ensure that the presidency only goes to someone who is to an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications.
An eminent degree. Someone who is highly qualified for the job.
The Electoral College was created specifically to prevent an unfit candidate from becoming president.
There are 538 members of the Electoral College. You
and just 36 other conscientious Republican electors can make a difference
by voting your conscience on December 19th.
Now, it even gets worse. We're learning tonight also that President Obama and Hillary Clinton are directly tied to this plan. Now, the Daily Caller is reporting that a public relations firm that represents some of these, quote, faithless electors was co-founded by former White House advisor Van Jones. He now, by the way, works at the Clinton News Network, CNN. Now, the company is reportedly filled with board members who have worked for President Obama and Clinton's campaign in the past. And that's not all. The left is also using extreme tactics to try and influence these electors, including threats of violence. Take a look at what's been happening to a Michigan Electoral College voter in that state.
I've been inundated with hundreds and hundreds of letters to my house, Facebook messages, and some of those messages were death threats. I've had people threatening to put a bullet in the back of my mouth, people saying to throw myself in front of a bus, sending me pictures of a noose, saying if I don't do the right thing that they'll get me.
And crazy leftists like the washed-up Keith Olbermann, they're even coming out of the woodwork to attack Donald Trump. Watch this.
He has been helped into the White House by the evil of another nation, and yet all our politicians will do is promise reviews and committees whose words will be too measured and too late. The voters have guaranteed themselves slavery, defeat, economic disaster, and the need to soon or late save this nation and restore freedom by extricating ourselves from a Trump regime by whatever process provides itself.
All right, how far Keith has fallen. Imagine if I said the same thing back in 2008 after Barack Obama had won the election. Now, Democrats, they're being total hypocrites. Ever since Clinton lost, President Obama, he's been floating the idea that Russia could have influenced the election. But back in October, he was actually mocking Donald Trump for raising concerns. Take a look.
The larger point that I want to emphasize here is that there is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections. And so I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
That's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him.
Now, make no mistake, by doing that, he is threatening our democracy. I got to tell you, as your Secretary of State, I went to 112 countries, and I went to countries where people were jailed for being political opponents, where they were exiled, where they were killed. I take this really seriously. And for me, the peaceful transfer of power is one of the things that makes our country great.
I guess not. All right, also tonight, President-elect Trump, he's responding to the hacking hysteria from the left. Now, he tweeted earlier today, if Russia or some other entity was hacking, well, why did the White House wait so long to act? Why did they only complain after Hillary lost? And Congressman Pete King, he thinks that some in the intelligence community may be trying to undermine President-elect Trump. Watch this.
All we've heard from the intelligence community over the last several months is that they could not say that there was any attempt to undermine Hillary Clinton to help Donald Trump. There was nothing at all ever told to us. In fact, they said that they couldn't prove it, that there was an attempt to favor one candidate over the other. Director Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, said that publicly on November 17th. It's almost as if people in the intelligence community are carrying out a disinformation campaign against the President-elect of the United States. It's absolutely disgraceful, and if they're not doing it, then it must be someone in the House or the Senate who's leaking false information, and there should be a full investigation of this.
Here with us now, Fox News contributor, editor-in-chief of Life Zet, nationally syndicated radio host Laura Ingraham. Right. There was nothing new here, Laura. We know that. We know that the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI, disagree. And on top of that, we know the CIA has played politics in the past. Benghazi, great example. They never talked to the people on the ground. They went forward with a narrative out of Langley that supported Hillary's lie.
It's almost like the intelligence community wants everyone to forget all of, its black spots over the last several years, the things that they missed about Chinese space militarization, the threat at the border being open, obviously Benghazi's a big one, and many more. And it's almost like the shiny object of Trump is over here, so no one will focus on the deficiencies that obviously exist. There are great men and women in the intelligence agencies, but this smacks of such bitterness, Sean, and sour grapes. The fact of the matter is there is absolutely no proof that this